King David, a man after God's own heart, ruled Israel with wisdom and strength. He was a warrior, a poet, and a king, known for his bravery in battle and his soulful psalms. Years of battles had passed, leaving scars on the land and on David's heart. The evening air was calm in Jerusalem, a city that had seen both triumph and turmoil. David, restless and seeking solace, walked on the palace roof, his mind heavy with thoughts. The setting sun cast long shadows, painting the city in hues of gold and crimson. Below, the city buzzed with life, merchants closing their stalls and families gathering for the evening meal. But David's heart was heavy with a strange unease, a feeling he couldn't quite shake off. The king's gaze drifted across the rooftops, searching for something to calm his restless spirit. He noticed a woman bathing, her silhouette illuminated by the fading light. Her beauty was striking, like nothing he had ever seen. A vision that seemed almost otherworldly. It was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, a loyal soldier in David's army known for his unwavering dedication. In that instant, David was captivated, his heart pounding with a mix of admiration and forbidden desire. He had known many women, but this was different. This was a longing that stirred something deep within him. This was a dangerous desire, a forbidden longing that could lead to consequences he dared not imagine. As he stood there, torn between duty and desire, David's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. The moon began to rise, casting a silvery glow over the city, as if to remind David of the purity he was about to compromise. His hand gripped the edge of the rooftop, knuckles white with tension as he struggled with his emotions. Bathsheba, unaware of the king's gaze, continued her evening ritual, a picture of innocence and grace. Finally, with a heavy heart, David turned away, knowing that the path he was tempted to take could lead to his downfall. He walked back into the palace, the weight of his choices pressing down on him as the night enveloped Jerusalem in its quiet embrace. David couldn't turn away from the sight of Bathsheba. The evening light cast a golden hue over her, making her appear almost ethereal. Her every movement was graceful, captivating his attention entirely. Her beauty seemed to shimmer in the twilight, a rare and enchanting sight that stirred something deep within him. It was as if the very essence of the evening had conspired to highlight her allure. He felt an unfamiliar pull, a potent mixture of desire and curiosity. This was not just a fleeting attraction, it was a powerful force that seemed to grip his very soul, urging him to learn more about her. Who was this woman who could command his attention so completely? Her presence was like a magnet, drawing him in with an intensity he had never experienced before. He needed to know more about her, to understand the mystery that surrounded her. He sent a servant to inquire about her, unable to resist the urge to uncover her identity. The wait for the servant's return felt interminable, each moment stretching into an eternity. The servant returned with news that ignited a fire in David's heart. The revelation of her identity only intensified his feelings, setting his heart ablaze with a passion he could scarcely control. She was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. David knew Uriah well, a man of great valor and loyalty. This knowledge should have tempered his desire, but it only added a layer of complexity to his emotions. Uriah was a brave and loyal soldier, a man who risked his life for his king. His dedication and bravery were well known, making David's feelings for Bathsheba even more troubling. Yet knowing this, David didn't suppress his desire. Instead, he found himself increasingly consumed by it, torn between his duty as a king and his longing as a man. Instead, he allowed it to fester, growing stronger with each passing day. The internal conflict was palpable, a battle between his conscience and his heart. He summoned Bathsheba to the palace, a decision driven by a mix of entitlement and desperation. The anticipation of seeing her again was almost unbearable. Perhaps he believed his position granted him certain privileges, a justification for his actions that he clung to in his moments of doubt. He was the king, after all. His power and influence were unmatched, and he was accustomed to getting what he wanted. But this time, the stakes were higher, and the consequences more profound. Bathsheba arrived at the palace, unaware of the storm brewing in the king's heart. She was brought before David, and he was immediately captivated by her presence. He saw not just her beauty, but her intelligence, her grace. He was enchanted. In that moment, David succumbed to his desire. He took her as his own, forgetting his responsibilities, his morals, and his God. He betrayed the trust of a loyal soldier, a man who was away fighting for the very kingdom David ruled. What began as a fleeting glance from a rooftop had spiraled into a web of deceit and lust. David had fallen, and the consequences would be dire. Weeks turned into months, and Bathsheba's secret began to show. She was with child. Fear gripped David's heart. He had to protect his reputation, his throne, and his image. His thoughts turned dark, consumed by desperation. He devised a plan as cold and calculated as it was heartless. David summoned Uriah back from the battlefield. He pretended to inquire about the war, about his soldiers, about Uriah's well-being, but it was all a facade. David's true intention was to send Uriah home to his wife, to make it seem as if the child was his. He hoped to conceal his sin in the shadow of war. Section 5. A prophet's visit. Uriah, ever the loyal soldier, refused the comforts of home while his comrades were still on the battlefield. His sense of duty and honor was unparalleled, a testament to his unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers and his king. He slept at the palace gates, his loyalty to his king and his duty unwavering. David's plan had failed. Despite the king's attempts to bring him home, Uriah's steadfastness was unshakable, a true embodiment of loyalty and integrity. Desperate, he resorted to a more sinister scheme. David's mind raced as he concocted a plan that would rid him of Uriah, a plan that would forever stain his conscience. He sent Uriah back to the front lines carrying his own death warrant. The weight of the sealed letter in Uriah's hand was heavy, though he had no idea of its contents. His trust in his king was absolute. The news of Uriah's death in battle reached David. The king's heart sank as he heard the report, a mixture of relief and dread washing over him. The deed was done, but at what cost? He felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of remorse, but it was quickly extinguished by relief. The burden of his secret weighed heavily on him, yet he tried to convince himself that it was necessary. He had covered his tracks, or so he thought. David believed that his actions were hidden, that no one would uncover the truth behind Uriah's death, but he couldn't hide from God. The omniscient presence of the divine saw through his deceit, and the consequences of his actions were inevitable. One day a prophet named Nathan arrived at the palace. Nathan, known for his wisdom and connection to the divine, brought with him a message that would shake the very foundations of David's soul. The king's heart pounded as he awaited the prophet's words, knowing that his darkest secret was about to be revealed. Section 6, the parable of the lamb. Nathan, a messenger of God, came to David with a heavy heart. He knew the truth of David's actions, and he came not to condemn, but to awaken the king's conscience. He told David a parable, a story about a rich man who had many sheep, and a poor man who had only one beloved lamb. The rich man, out of selfishness and greed, took the poor man's lamb for himself. David, enraged by the rich man's cruelty, declared, "As surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die." He demanded justice for the poor man, unaware that he was passing judgment on himself. Section 7, Unveiling the Truth. Nathan, with a steady voice, turned to David and said, "You are the man." The king was taken aback. Nathan revealed the truth, exposing David's sin for what it was: adultery, deceit, and murder. He spoke of God's anger, of the consequences of David's actions. He spoke of the sword that would never depart from his house. David, stripped bare of his pride and arrogance, finally saw the gravity of his actions. The weight of his sin crushed him. He had betrayed God, betrayed his people, and betrayed himself. The consequences of his sin would reverberate through his family, his kingdom, and history itself. Section 8, David's Confession. Overwhelmed with guilt and remorse, David broke down. He confessed his sin to Nathan, acknowledging the depths of his transgression. He cried out to God, begging for forgiveness and mercy. He had sinned against Bathsheba, against Uriah, and most importantly, against the Lord. His heart ached with the knowledge of his own wickedness. He had strayed so far from the path of righteousness. But in his confession, there was a glimmer of hope. David understood the depth of his sin and sought God's forgiveness with all his heart. Section 9, The Price of Sin. God, in his infinite mercy, forgave David. However, forgiveness did not erase the consequences of his actions. Nathan delivered God's judgment. The child born from this union would die. David was devastated. He pleaded with God to spare the child, fasting and praying for days. But the child grew weaker with each passing day. Finally, the inevitable happened. The baby died, a stark reminder of the price of sin. David's grief was immeasurable, a heavy burden he would carry for the rest of his days. Section 10. The weight of consequences. The death of the child marked a turning point in David's life. He emerged from his grief a changed man, humbled and broken. He understood the weight of his actions and the importance of seeking God's guidance in all things. The consequences of his sin continued to haunt him. His family was torn apart by conflict and tragedy. He faced rebellions and turmoil within his own kingdom. The sword that Nathan had spoken of never truly departed from his house. Yet through it all, David clung to God, seeking forgiveness and striving to live a life pleasing to the Lord. Section 11. A timeless lesson. The story of David and Bathsheba is a timeless tale of sin and redemption. It reminds us that even the greatest among us are capable of falling prey to temptation. David's story is a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked desire and the devastating consequences of sin. It teaches us that true repentance leads to forgiveness, but not necessarily an escape from the consequences of our actions. But most importantly, it reminds us that God's love and mercy are always available to those who seek Him with a sincere heart, no matter how far they have strayed. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please join our growing family and subscribe to our channel. May God bless you in all your endeavors. Thank you for watching.